Check out this new yarn base I have. Isn't it pretty? It sparkles. Isn't that amazing? So that's right, guys. I have a new yarn base and I can't wait to open this bag and start dyeing with you guys and show you how it ends up working out. So this is from Yarn Undyed. That is the place that I order my yarn from, for anybody who wants to know. And AC Wood is one of the brands that they have there. So this is 400 meters for 100 grams Hanks, and it is 75% superwash extra fine merino and 20% nylon and 5% Lurex, and that is what causes this sparkle to show up once you have applied dye to it. So do you remember your first crush? I remember mine. His name was Dan Rogers. Hi Dan, if you're watching, which he's probably not. And he had a Volkswagen Beetle car. It did not run at all. He was 14 and I was 13, and he could not wait to paint it midnight blue. And I thought the idea of midnight blue, that color, was such a cool concept, and that might have been the reason why I thought that I liked him so much. But anyway, he had long brown hair and he had blue eyes and he loved the Beatles. And anyway, he wanted to paint his car midnight blue. Now, I just want to go ahead and say that he never ended up driving that car. I had a crush on him for like a summer, okay? So he lived down the street from me and he was in one of my math classes. But I did always remember that color, midnight blue. And guess what? Dharma Dye has a midnight blue, and I have mixed it up, and I cannot wait to see how this Lurex looks. Right, all of these sparklies, I don't know if you can tell. I can't wait to see how it looks with the midnight blue. So what I'm going to do is dye this two ways. I am going to go for a solid color in both situations, okay? But the first way I'm going to try is kettle dyeing. Usually, if you want a solid color, kettle dyeing is going to be your best bet, because you can just add the dye to it like this. I'm just kind of rinsing it out to make sure I got all that dye on there. Look at that. Isn't that like, it's like a purpley blue. At least that's the way it looks right now. And so the best way to do is just add the yarn. You know, you turn up the heat. I just turned up the heat on mine. And you add the yarn and then you let it sit there for, I don't know. I would say about 30 minutes is probably the best amount of time to put on it. But what I do is that I let it kind of come to a boil, and then I try to turn it down to let it simmer for a little bit. Try to keep it there for at least 5 minutes, and then I pretty much turn it all the way down and let the yarn cool down in that water. And that's typically what I do. I did not say what was in this yet, and I apologize because I already poured the midnight blue in there. I was too excited. But anyway, I have 16 cups of water, just over 2 tablespoons of vinegar, and and it was by accident. As I was pouring the vinegar in here, I accidentally poured a little bit more than I needed to on my second tablespoon. So that's what we have here. And I went ahead and I made a 1% stock solution for this midnight blue, and I've used 3 tablespoons of it in this pot. So what I've noticed, because like you saw before, I do have one of these dyed, was that it's extremely hard to get a solid color because this Lurex, it floats. So I'm gonna try to get a solid color in both this kettle, and then I'm gonna try again in this pan. You can probably see it over here, and we're gonna see which one works better. So first, let's go ahead and put this in here, and you will see what I mean by it floating. Okay, so we've got this in here, right? So normally I would, gosh, that's a pretty color. Normally I would just put it in there and let it be, but can you see how some of this floats? It even floats to the surface. It's, you know, I'll try picking it up and just putting it down again here. And see, I'll push it underneath, and then some of it will still float to the surface. It's that Lurex, and I think And so what I'm trying to do is see about getting a full color coverage. So where is that? There it is. I was looking for the zip tie. And this zip tie makes sure that I do not get this messed up. So as we can see, we've got this really dark midnight blue, but I think you can probably see that this part of it is not as the same color as this part. Now we haven't applied heat yet. Yes, the heat's on, but it hasn't started really affecting the water yet. So it's not going to make that big of a difference, but just demonstrating that this dye is not applying itself the way that you would expect it to in a kettle dye, the way it would with something without Lurex. Now I do use this extra fine superwash merino wool a lot. It's my favorite merino blend to use because this extra fine fibers that they use makes it kind of a medium sheen and very, very soft. Like you wouldn't believe it's soft. But I have never worked with Lurex until just the other day when I was kind of playing with that one hank that I showed you at the beginning. So we will see how this works. So every so often what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be coming back to this and I'm going to be kind of stirring it and kind of making sure that it stays deep in there. Okay, so now we are going to switch over and you'll be able to see this pan and I will have another hank in there. All right guys, so now you're on the other side of the stove with me. I have put this beautiful sparkly yarn in here. It is so pretty. We've got now 8 cups of water to 2 tablespoons of vinegar, and I have the exact same thing in here, only it's I kind of diluted it with water. So the same amount of dye is going into this solution, okay, as is going into the one that's right next to me that I'm looking at right now, right? So it's not going to change how much pigment it should be. They should both be the same pigment, but because we're using this low immersion, that's why we have less water. So I just wanted to clarify why that is. So now I'm going to see about adding this. And of course, you know, I'm not going to be able to pour it on there perfectly. But what we can do here, and I know I should probably be wearing my gloves for this, but I guess that I just don't mind being messy, is we're going to just kind of push this through the water and we're going to see if we can get an even application from this one that is being dyed through this low immersion level. So I did turn on the heat on this one. Right here it's hot, and or it's not hot, I mean I can feel it that it's getting warm. So I do know that this is starting to heat up. Over on this side, not so much. I think my bigger burner is back here, though. I'm not certain, but I think it's back there. So yeah, and look at that. The water has almost completely cleared. So that is a good sign. Let's go ahead and pick it up and turn it over and see how that's doing. Okay, so it looks like on this other side, I don't know if you can tell here, right there and there. Let's see, about underneath this. Yeah, see, it did not apply exactly the same, and what I want is for it to have an even application. Since I'm not going to touch on the other side, I'm going to add a little bit more dye. I would say this is about maybe a teaspoon, and I'm going to pour it. I just diluted it with water. This is just regular water, nothing else. And just gonna push this over here to try to get on that underside. And this time, instead of using my hands, like I said, you know, you guys, it really is probably better to wear gloves just because it will dye your fingers. And unless you don't care about that, you know, just know about that. Yeah. So yeah, I'm spreading it out here with a spoon, doing pretty much the same kind of thing, but as you can see, that pigment just kind of stayed there. So what I think is kind of interesting about this yarn right here is that it is very hard to apply dye evenly on it. either way, we are going to go ahead and let this sit, and we are going to let the one in the pot sit, and then I will meet you at the table and we can look at the differences between these two yarns. Like, is this going to end up being an even application? How can we get an even application? And so I'll see you at the table. All right, so it's the next day. My yarn has completely dried, and it is time to look at the difference between the two hanks that I dyed on camera with you guys. So this first hank that I want to show you is the one that I dyed in the low immersion dye. And that's the one that I used my pan with. And I remember I had to add just a little bit of extra because I saw some lighter patches. So as you can see, it looks like a pretty decent coverage here. There are places like right here where this tie is. It is a little bit less saturated there. In fact, it might have even just had some resist right there where it didn't really pick up much dye at all. There are places like this place here where it's just a lighter blue. It is definitely blue, it's just lighter. And you can see some variation in the color. And let me just kind of show this around the whole hank here for you. And, you know, again, this part's a lot lighter than, say, this part right here. So it was not completely equal. You know, this is more of a tonal yarn, right? But it was good to do this in the pan because I was able to see if maybe being able to control where I put the yarn and then like kind of pushing it around and all of that, if that was going to help get that distribution of color a little bit better. So let's go ahead and compare that. I'll just go ahead and put that off screen for now to the one that I kettle dyed. And I kettle dyed this as just one hank in my dye pot. Now there are still some places where it is a lot lighter than others, but the lightness here compared to some of the places on the one that I dyed in my pan is it's a lot darker than, say, this resist where it did not get hardly any dye on it. So what I have learned from this is that as you look through the and just looking around the ties too, just to make sure, if you look through this one hank here that I dyed in a kettle, you can see that this got a much more clearer depth of shade here. Again, you know, it's a little bit lighter here, but in general, you know, while it is a tonal yarn, it is more of a solid yarn than the one that I did in the pan. So here is the two skeins hanked up. This one is the one that we dyed in the pan, and this is the one that we dyed in the kettle. As you can see, the one we dyed in the kettle is much more of a solid color, whereas this one has a lot more variations. It's definitely more of a tonal, although both of them are a tonal. So what I did with this information was that I decided, okay, so from what I understand of this, that means that if I want a more solid color, then I need to dye them in the kettle, right? And so I want to show you what I did. So here I have two of this more kind of rose color yarn here, and it's a sparkle. You can't see it as well because it's not as dark, but it definitely has all of those sparklies in it. Both of these I dyed these separately, but you know, one hank each, and so I was dyeing this and I was getting what I wanted, you know. Let me go ahead and unhank one of these just so I can show you. You know, it is more or less about the same color throughout. Yes, this side is a little bit more light than this one, but overall we have a depth of shade that is more similar than it is different. Yes, it's a tonal. So I was really happy with how these two came out, and I thought, you know what, this is going really well. I'm going to go ahead and dye the rest of my sock yarn here with the Midnight Blue. And here's something that I learned also, and I think it's important to share this with you guys since we did these experiments. So just to remind you, this is what the 2 hanks of yarn look like that we did on camera together, okay? And this one's the one that had some problems with it because it was done in that pan, but still we got to see that this is the better way to do it with the kettle. So I went ahead and I started kettle dyeing more of the yarn because I really love this midnight blue. And look what happened. Okay, so I kettle dyed this yarn, did it exactly the way I did the others, except, wait a minute, I did 2 of them at the same time. I did not think that that was going to create as big of a difference. However, as you can see, it did create a big difference. So here's one where we can see places where it got really dark, you know, so this is a nice dark midnight blue, right? But then we have these places where it's really light. So I have decided to name this Twilight Blue because after that sun sets, we get different hues of blue in the sky, and up until it gets to be really dark to where it is more of a black blue in the sky. And I love this color. I love the way that this turned out here. I'm just going to have to remember that if I want even coverage and I don't want so much of a tonal like these, then I'm going to need to just do one at a time. And that's fine. I have multiple dye pots that are just dedicated to dyeing with acid dye, and I can do that. That's not a problem. But I wish I had also considered that I would get more even coverage if there was less yarn in the pot. So that is the one thing that I learned that was off camera, and I just wanted to share that with you guys because I think it's just as important to learn that. That said, by the time that this video posts, so right now, these 4 hanks are going to be located in my shop as a ready to ship item. Basically, I'm obviously not going to have to dye these. They're already dyed, they're already dry, and so if you want to pick up one of these skeins of yarn or more than one, they will be in my shop. I am also going to be putting these 2 in my shop, and I'm going to just be calling it a medium rose color. Again, it's just it's sparkly. It's got some notes that are a little bit purple, but it's mostly a pink color. Okay, and then I have the one that I showed you on screen at the very beginning. It is made with a similar dye as this one, but it is a little bit lighter. So I'm going to be calling this light rose. And then I also just made one that's kind of like this, that is both blue and this rose color. These 2 would match really well. And then these 2 would even match really well. But anyway, I'm going to also be listing this. I'm probably going to call it something like cotton candy. But these are limited edition. I'm just going to have these up, you know, again, they will ship as soon as they're purchased. So keep that in mind. So now that we've learned how to dye Lurex yarn now so that it is as solid as we can get it, I want to ask you guys a question. Are you interested in me carrying this base? Do you like this yarn base? And just to remind you, this is a 75% superwash extra fine merino. The extra fine merino is just really, really soft. It's 20% nylon, 5% Lurex. That's the sparkly here. And it is 400 meters per 100 gram hanks, or 437 yards. This is a fingering weight yarn. So do keep that in mind. So if you're interested in that, let me know and I will order some more. So I also have a surprise. The 2 hanks that I dyed for this video will be going into my next giveaway. I have the giveaway all selected and picked out. It's just a matter of putting it all on the table, arranging it nicely, and being able to talk about all the different items. So look for that video to post relatively soon. This will be going in my May giveaway. So definitely look out for that, especially if you would like a couple of hanks of this yarn. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and give it a like. It really helps the channel out a lot. It lets people know about me and all the different things that I do. Plus, you might want to subscribe, because you know that giveaway that I'm talking about, you won't know about it unless you subscribe to the channel. And obviously then you wouldn't know who wins unless you subscribe to the channel. And my giveaways are pretty big. They're pretty they're pretty epic as far as how much I give. So I do want to just, you know, really encourage you to subscribe to get some free stuff if you're the winner. Or if you think that me and you might get along. Alright guys, thank you guys so much for watching this video to the end. I will see you soon with another video. Bye for now.